Got another one of them popping at the mouth or the side of his neck when he.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to be talking about NXT from September the 13th, 2022, in which Triple H's fan service continues, and he needs to learn the hard way. Fan service, well, I think he did learn the hard way, but I guess he didn't learn. He got taught a lesson that he did not learn. That fan service is not the way to go. We talk about that later. We're going to talk about the show right now. This is a really good episode of NXT. This is kind of the season finale of NXT. This is the 1 year anniversary of NXT 2.0, which of course, grand opening, grand closing. Let's just talk about it right now. Apparently they're going to be changing, rebranding, back to something that looks a little bit closer to the original NXT. Near the end of the show, there was a short speech from Shawn Michaels about NXT superstars coming and going, and NXT always evolving. And then the rainbow multicolored NXT logo became solid white with a gold outline, which led a lot of people to believe that NXT black and gold will be returning, even though I think it's going to be more of something new. I don't think it's going to be, you can't go back to what things are. It has to be something new. That's what evolution is. So I'm guessing it's going to be something different. I'm of the opinion that you can't go back to a time. Like, you just can't put things back in the bottle. Like, you can't go back to the Attitude Era. You can't go back to the Hogan era, the WrestleMania era. People who get real hung up on the past, to me, that is incredibly boring, and it defeats the purpose of what the hell this business is. You know, you have to keep moving forward. And this is the one thing that I do kind of agree with when it comes to like the Young Bucks and all these guys, is that sometimes you can't be married and hang on to everything in the past. You have to let some things go. NXT is a brand that is always about the future. It's always about future superstars, and they will always have to have a different presentation. Over the years, NXT has changed. It changed drastically over the last year. Not too drastically, however. It was mostly just a change in the color scheme. The recruitment changed. So, do I expect that to change? No. Well, a lot of people who are gushing about the whole NXT black and gold thing, they're thinking we're going to start getting more indie wrestlers. And it's like, I don't think so. WWE has already said, you know, how their recruitment is going to go. And I think what they're going to have is a warehouse full of recruits. And then you're going to have the occasional indie wrestler who they signed, who will come in and be pulled straight to the main roster. Or not straight to the main roster, but straight to NXT TV. Because they already got years of experience. And that'll give them time to prepare 5 or 6 more people for them to work with. And that's kind of how NXT is supposed to work anyway. They got away from that, especially during the years when they were competing with AEW, because all they wanted to do was compete with AEW. And in doing that, they were, just signing every independent wrestler out there in the world to exorbitant contracts, and it wasn't really working out. But now, since both companies have sort of hit the crunch, both, AEW has signed as many people as it possibly can sign, and really doesn't have room for anyone else. NXT has shaved the roster down a lot. They started using their recruits a lot more. I don't see that changing. I don't see you changing the logo being the change of that. That's going to change. Maybe they'll get rid of that damn Wale theme song, which I hate. Hopefully that will be the case. But I welcome the change because I really wasn't a big fan of the logo in the multicolored scheme. I thought that was it was a bit much. But the philosophy, I don't think will change that much, because the philosophy didn't change that much when they went to the multicolored NXT 2.0 concept. What really changed was the people that they were pushing, because so many guys were leaving, and that was the AEW effect. That was AEW tugging on the coattails of Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly and those guys who wanted to jump ship and leave. So that precipitated the NXT 2.0 move more than anything, was so many of those guys leaving. So now that they're gone, and we are now used to, and the numbers have recovered. the TV numbers have actually recovered. For most of the year, NXT 2.0 was below what the black and gold era was. But in recent weeks, it has gone back up to around 5 to 600,000 viewers, which is about what it was when the roster was mostly indie wrestlers, and the bulk of the budget was going towards indie wrestlers. But now they kind of reversed course. I don't see them going back. I think what they wanted to change when it comes to NXT was some of the complaints that people had about the show being boring, the show being dry, the show being dark. And that was a lot of the problems that you can go back and look at people say this stuff. All these people who are going to be fake happy now that they're getting rid of NXT 2.0 because they hated that too. They hated NXT. This is why, Triple H's whole fan service BS, he should have learned. All he was doing in NXT during the black and gold era was fan service. Sign your favorite indie wrestler, push him to the top immediately. Then we pulled him over to Raw or SmackDown or whatever. And it worked for a little while until AEW came and started throwing more money at fan service than Triple H was willing to do, because he had Vince McMahon controlling the purse strings, and because NXT wasn't really a draw, and they never really had been. Now, they were starting to make a little bit of money right before the pandemic. They were running bigger arenas. They was actually being a little bit more independent. But for bulk of NXT's time, it was a money pit. It was a place where you paid guys like Kevin Owens an exorbitant fee to go down there, work a couple of months, and then you pull them out. And then it became, hey, we need them to work for more than a few months. We need them down here for a year or two. And they weren't really drawing enough to justify having these, high paid indie workers in the company. But, AEW came and solved that problem by scooping up a couple of those guys. So now you can just focus on your recruits. So I think they fixed a lot of the problems. They have the overhead lights now. They have the big production thing, with the Trons. They have that, which is not something they had during the NXT days, the black and gold days. So they have all that stuff now. They fixed the lighting problem. It's a lot lighter in the arena. You can see a lot better now. So they fixed a lot of those problems. So you don't really need the rebranding of the multicolored thing, but it's just more Triple H fan service. He feel like he has to do something to reignite interest in NXT because it's his baby. But it won't be long. It'll be in a couple of months. The same people who don't watch NXT, probably wasn't watching it tonight, likely won't watch the show still. Like, people are not going to like a show or not like a show because of the color scheme. That's just, you have to think about these things. Most motherfuckers would not care what it looks like if they cared about the show. The fact of the matter is, a lot of those people had jumped ship to AEW. They did not care what you did with NXT. They were shitting on NXT black and gold while they were still black and gold, while Finn Balor was still there, while Adam Cole was still there, while Tommaso Ciampa was still there. So I don't understand why, we're catering to the people who didn't watch the fucking show in the first place. They didn't like the show. They wanted to watch AEW. So we should have let those people have what they wanted, which is AEW. And now AEW has cratered. In some respects, it's cratered. It's still there. It's still pumping out fan service, but it's not as much as it was because, you can't do that stuff forever. There's no more people to sign, so there's no more big signees. It's the same thing Triple H had, same problem he had. Triple H was bringing in Keith Lee and Damian Priest. They were doing the big signing for the takeovers and all this kind of stuff, and it wasn't really working out. It was big fan servicey crap where you bringing guys in from Evolve or bringing guys in from Impact or something like that. And it worked for a while. That built the reputation for NXT. And then somebody came along and did it better and swerved right into your lane, stole all your goodies, and made you look stupid. And now you're going to double back for a double dip of people to just do it again. And it makes no sense. We need to focus again on the young talent, not what the logo looks like. But as long as the same players are in the same positions, NXT is going to be fine. And I think a lot of people who who are superficial and I can't watch this because of the multicolored logo. Those people, they're just going to look at the same people. Still going to be Tiffany Stratton and Wendy Chu and all that. It's still going to be there, you know? So it's going to be people I hate and people I like there still. It's just that it's all phony, fake, fan service for these weirdos to be excited about a brand they didn't care about because they jump ship to AEW. Now it's an opportunity for them to jump ship back. And I understand it strategically, even if I don't really care about it, you know, in all honesty, because I didn't like the rainbow logo either. So I don't really care. But again, it's a strategy. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it as a strategy, but he should have learned by now not to consistently crater and change things because certain people online are complaining about it. I mean, again, that's my point of bringing the numbers up. The numbers had recovered. You know, what really struggled was nobody knew who any of the new talent was. Nobody knew who Braun Breaker was. Nobody knew who this, you know, all of these guys were that they were intending to push in NXT 2.0. They didn't want to give them a chance. They were shitting all over them every single week. Anytime somebody new popped up, there was complaints about how, you know, this person, you know, their eyebrows were uneven. I hate his shape up, you know, yada, yada, yada. It was just constantly complaining, constant. Then some people were complaining about the show. They didn't even watch the show. They were just looking at clips online. So now having those people think that they won, when in reality, the numbers recovered and there was no real reason to do this, you know, changing the logo other than to play fan service. To me, it just seems to make no sense. And, you know, if they do somehow change, the status of the people in the show and stuff like that, start wanting to push indie wrestlers and all that kind of stuff, it just proves that, you know, Triple H is not fit to run the company. You know, you can't run a company on fan service. It just doesn't work. It's not a viable long-term plan. It's a good short-term plan because AEW right now can't really give people fan service because they can't really afford it. And, you know, they're in a position right now where they've gotten their nuts cut off because of all of the arguing and fighting between all the people backstage. So it's a good strategy to attack AEW, and try to steal some of that fan base by, you know, bringing back some of that goodwill. But ultimately, it's just going to bite you in the ass in the end because these people are fickle and they abandoned you once. What makes you think they won't abandon you again? All right, so let's get into the show finally. 12 minutes of me rambling about the logo. I wanted to wait to the end and do that, but never mind. Also, since we're here, a little programming note. I think I'm going to start doing my live streams on Thursdays because even though I do work on Thursday, I don't work on Fridays. So if I do the shows at Thursday at 9 o'clock, there's no wrestling show on, and I don't have to go to work the next day, so I can go as long as I want. So let's do that. We're going to try to do the live streams every Thursday at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock Eastern time, because I am in Detroit. All right, so let's get into the NXT 1 year anniversary, the Cyber Tuesday episode of NXT, where we voted for things, and only one of the things that we voted for actually happened. All right, so the first match, Steel Cage, the Creed brothers versus Pretty Deadly. Pretty Deadly are amazing. They're great. They're a treasure. They're a treasure to NXT. The tandem offense of Pretty Deadly is very innovative, and I really like it. The tandem offense by the Creed brothers, though, is also very good. The bowling ball spot where Julius holds up both the Pretty Deadly while Brutus does sort of the cannonball from the top rope and bowls them both over. That's fucking sweet. All right, that's a fucking sweet move. And he's getting better at the little bowling ball thing because he's not looking like he's going to break his shins anymore. You know, the first time he did it, like he's going to break his shins, his ankles, his MCL, ACL, hamstring, and everything in his legs. But now he seems to have, you know, practiced it a little bit, so it's better. There was another little springboard move that Pretty Deadly did where one of them bounced off the other one's back. That was a pretty dope spot, but I think the Creed brothers ended up foiling it. Of course, Damon Kemp interfered in the match. He climbed the top of the cage and ended up handcuffing Julius Creed to the top of the cage while he was standing on the top rope. So he's up there, little homie on stuck. Julius ended up fighting Damon Kemp back, but it was a Pyrrhic victory considering he was handcuffed to the top rope. This led Pretty Deadly 2-on-1 against Brutus, which of course ultimately led to Pretty Deadly winning with Spoiled Milk, their finish, which he kicked out of once, which I probably wouldn't have had him do that, but whatever. So Pretty Deadly win is the right decision. The Creed brothers are very good. After they do whatever they're going to do with Damon Kemp, I think they should get called up to Raw or SmackDown and put with the Alpha Academy. That's what I would do. Pretty Deadly are very good. I don't see why they're still in NXT either. But we can't pull up everybody at once. You have to take your time with this kind of stuff. So that was great. We had we had Carmelo Hayes. His opponent was announced. The three options were Von Wagner. I don't know why a man's name would be Vaughn under any circumstances. So that's why I came up with Van. I thought it was better. Joe Creepy Man Gacy and Wesley. Wesley won the vote. I specifically went into the NXT portal to vote against this motherfucker. But when I saw the options, I was like, oh my God, how could I in my right mind vote for Von Wagner? I couldn't even pull myself to do it. So I voted for Joe Gacy. Knowing that Joe Gacy was not going to win, I voted for Joe Gacy anyway. So Wesley thanked the fans, said this means a lot to him. It's a responsibility for him to win the North American title. Joe Gacy said he accepts the fan results, but there was more important work to be done. So that means that Joe Gacy was not through for the evening. He was not through for the evening by a long shot. So Cameron Grimes, later in the show, said that he did need Gacy. He doesn't need Tony D'Angelo. And that the only person he can trust is himself because he's going to the moon. He's the only man that is going to the moon. This led to the tag team match, Tony D'Angelo and Stax versus Cameron Grimes. And I was wondering, were they going to throw some fan service on this one and say, like, who could it possibly be? But it didn't take me long before I thought about it. I was like, oh, it's going to be Joe Gacy. And sure enough, Joe Gacy came down to the ringside to join the match. I like that he tagged himself in. Cameron Grimes didn't want to tag him in, so he ended up tagging himself in. And Gacy ended up winning the match. Afterwards, Gacy and Cameron Grimes argued where Gacy was rejected once again. This was his last opportunity to impress Cameron Grimes, who said he didn't want his help and didn't need it. That led to the dyad just beating up Cameron Grimes and kicking his ass. And then Gacy joined in, and they had enough of Cameron Grimes rejecting them. So they whooped his ass and left him laying in the middle of the ring. I like this. This was great. I like how well it was done too. Because usually you would think that if you came out to help a guy on your own accord, of course, that would be a turning point in the relationship. That at that point, Cameron Grimes might be impressed with Joe Gacy, might actually start to like him. But by having Cameron Grimes continue to reject Joe Gacy, it was almost understandable that Joe Gacy would beat up Cameron Grimes. Even though, 3-on-1, they still pretty much beat him up. Also, the Dyad got into a fight in the NXT parking lot when they got into a fight with Malik Blade and Idris Enofe, who were kind of sticking their nose when it didn't belong, having opinions about things they shouldn't have opinions about, such as the Dyad and Joe Gacy and how they treat other people. They had an opinion. Nobody asked them. So they got into a fight backstage. I like how that linked up with the Hank Williams thing. Was his name Hank Williams? It was. I think his name was Hank Williams. I don't know. It's not Hank Williams. Hank Walker. Hank Williams is a country singer. it kind of linked up with the Hank Walker thing, where Hank Walker was backstage trying to help break up the fight, but he was told by his cohorts and the security force, "You've got a match, so you need to get out of here." And so he had to go get ready for his match because he had a match. Being a security guy and all, it's difficult doing double duty. He came to work to do one job and had to do another one. I wonder if he got paid twice. So let's talk about that. So Hank Walker defeated Big Body Javier Bernal. And I'm not going to hold you up. That Javier Bernal dude is funny. He's a funny guy. That Big Body Javi stuff is absolutely hilarious. Him being a delusional, look, it would work a lot better if he wasn't a jobber. But him being absolutely over the top, I'm an NXT superstar, you're just a security guard. Just a couple of weeks of that was enough to really get it over. Unfortunately, we didn't see a lot of Javier Bernal. He's just kind of like a loser who got into it with a security guard over and over again, instead of being a guy who was kind of on the rise. But in any event, Hank Walker defeats Javier Bernal. I love the little things that they did when it comes to this Hank Walker thing. He had no entrance music. He had no wrestling gear, but the crowd were really behind him. Like, they were really behind him. They treated him like he was like a real underdog. Like, it was a guy with no earthly reason to be in a wrestling ring, And by the end of the match, though, I was like, man, he actually fits with Brooks and Jensen. He fits with those guys. He should probably be like the third member of their group. Fourth, because Fallon Henley's a member of that group. So, plus with a name like Hank, you definitely should be hanging out with Josh Briggs, who looks like a Hank, and Brooks Jensen, who also looks like a Hank. I guess you could call them Hank, Good Hank, and Junichiro. I guess Jensen would be Good Hank, because that would be the baby Hank, right? So that means Josh Briggs will have to be Junichiro. All right, that's cool. That works. So going back to the Carmelo Hayes incident, Carmelo Hayes took out his opponents. He took out Wesley, jumped him from behind. A little help from Trick Williams as a distraction. Trick Williams going to talk to Wesley and tell him he needs to back down from this match. Then he got attacked. He got his head smashed in the locker just several times. It was brutal. This is one of the most brutal things Carmelo Hayes had ever done. And to be quite honest, as a heel, he hadn't really gotten this low yet. Like, usually he's just very cocky. He's not violent, Like, it's really rare for Carmelo Hayes to get down like this. Like what he did to Wesley, I don't think he's ever done that to anybody before. Attack somebody from behind in such a vicious manner. It was great. It was very refreshing, dare I say. Pretty refreshing. All right, so they at the main event, they poke saying that Wesley is not going to be in this match, and everybody knows it. He ain't built for this. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, and he wears the biggest and heaviest. Well, he has the biggest crown and the heaviest head in NXT. This led to Solo Sikoa, coming out there fresh off of his introduction into the Bloodline. Carmelo Hayes sold it visually pretty well by being kind of disappointed and upset because he thought he had gotten rid of Solo Sikoa, and everybody else did too, which is what made it such a great surprise that he was the one that popped up. I personally thought it was going to be Ricochet, but it being Solo Sikoa was fine too. So they have the match, and Solo Sikoa is working babyface, which is interesting because, this guy just screwed Drew McIntyre out of a heroic moment, the biggest moment in the history of, Wales. I don't know anything about Wales. So I'm guessing this is the most important thing that ever happened to Wales until the Queen died. So I'm saying, like, hey, Drew McIntyre had an opportunity to win the title in front of 50,000 of his countrymen. I don't understand how that goes. I'm pretty sure Wales is a different country than England, but it's the same country. Or is it like an ethnicity? I'm not sure. I don't care about the Welsh. Let's put it like that. In any event, this guy, he fucked over Drew McIntyre, and now he's put in a babyface position right here. And for somehow, it just works. Because of the horrible stuff that Carmelo Hayes did right before this to Wes Lee, people wanted him to see him get his comeuppance. And then throughout the match, you had Trick Williams interfering, constantly smashing Solo Sikoa's knee into the ring apron, or, if Solo Sikoa was to pick him up, Trick Williams would pull Carmelo Hayes down or pull him out of the ring or something like that. So they did a really good job of putting heat on Carmelo Hayes to get over Solo Sikoa. Sikoa ends up kicking Trick Williams, hit a Uranagi on Carmelo Hayes. That was awesome, by the way, because it was a springboard off the second rope, and he springboard right into it, into the Uso splash, and Solo Sikoa wins the North American Championship. Fantastic match, great moment. Yes, Carmelo Hayes needed to drop this belt. I think he needs to go on to the big belt. He's spent about a year, maybe, and some change in this role, but he was one of the last guys who were brought into the Black and Gold NXT. He was there shortly before it went to NXT 2.0, and he's got a major push during the 2.0 era. So maybe they're, going to pivot to him being the top guy now. I hope so. Or I hope they pull him to SmackDown. That would be great too. In any event, he needed to lose this belt in order for his career to go forward. And this was amazing. Really, really great job. They didn't forget that Solo Sikoa wanted to be the North American champion, but they also merged it with his current storyline, considering now he's a member of the Bloodline. He has a championship. So now every member of the Bloodline has a title with the exception of Sami Zayn. And if you look at, what Jey Uso said, Sami Zayn has got to start carrying his own weight. Everybody in the Bloodline got titles except him. This is going to lead Sami Zayn, no doubt, to maybe frantically trying to win either the United States title or the Intercontinental Championship and losing and embarrassing himself, which ought to be fun. There are no other titles for him to win. Maybe he'll pop up and try to challenge for the NXT title, and that should be fun too. And, that would be a nice little running gag where, Sami Zayn didn't think that, hey, NXT titles counted. And he's like, well, since it did, and Dolph Ziggler was able to win the NXT championship, he's a former NXT champion. Maybe he should go back down to NXT and wrestle Brian Breaker and win the NXT title. And that could be a great little look for Sami Zayn. And since we're not sure, and I'm pretty sure they're going to go with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Usos at one of these big shows for the tag team titles, which I'm pretty sure they're the guys who are going to beat the Usos for those belts. They need some time to get there. And if you put Sami Zayn in a position where he's chasing Gunther for the title, and of course he's not going to win, we'll have to do something with Sheamus. But, you're going to have Sami Zayn chasing Gunther for a short time, not win that title. And then maybe he jumps over to NXT for a short time. It can't win that title either, because there's only one other belt, or he tries to chase Bobby Lashley for the U.S. title for a while. Maybe that is how we're going to feel the time with Sami Zayn. That could be very interesting. But I like the idea of Solo Sikoa. It's also a good look for NXT because it kind of goes back to what they were doing somewhat before. Like, there have been plenty of NXT champions popping up on Raw and SmackDown. It's happened numerous times. Of course, everybody knows Karrion Kross lost while he was the NXT champion on fucking Raw, which was, quite frankly, more offensive than what he was wearing. And plus the fact that he lost in 90 seconds to Jeff Hardy. Look, I thought it was fine at the time because Jeff Hardy's a former world champion. He's super over and he was losing a lot. And I thought it was going to lead to a storyline. And instead it went nowhere. It went nowhere and did nothing for nobody. But we've seen plenty of people go up to NXT, win titles and go back to Raw or SmackDown for a little while. Most notably, Kevin Owens was the NXT champion. I think when he wrestled, was it John Cena? He was the NXT champion. I think Charlotte lost her first match on Raw when she was the women's champion of NXT or something like that. So it happens. So it's going to get some of the it's bait to hook the SmackDown audience to watch NXT. You know, if you like the Bloodline, Solo Sikoa is going to be one of the top guys of NXT. It's a hook. So I guess he's going to be doing double duty, which hopefully they don't do anything stupid, like have him, on SmackDown losing singles matches while trying to also be a champion in NXT. And don't tell me, oh, that's a Vince thing, because look at what they're doing to Austin Theory. Look what, they're still doing that dumb shit. Okay. They still having tag team champions lose to randomized tag teams. They had the Usos lose to a made up tag team not long ago. So, yeah, they're still doing the dumb shit. So this is great for Solo Sikoa, though. This is a title that he should have won probably a couple of weeks ago, but it makes more sense now. And it actually does more for his character now. But they need to figure out whether he's a babyface or a heel. This concept of he's going to be a heel on SmackDown, babyface in NXT is bunk. It's bunk. All right. That's the one thing about this that I don't like. I don't like that you're trying to play both sides of the fence. It's bunk. If he's going to be in the Bloodline, he needs to be a heel. And they need to make him a full heel. And it will also be nice if the Usos popped up on NXT. That would be great. That would be great too. I don't see why they wouldn't. Roman, that's asking for too much. But the Usos, I don't see why not. I think Pretty Deadly, wanting to wrestle the Usos would be a nice little situation that, we can all have fun with. The unified champions of NXT versus the unified champions of Raw and SmackDown. That's fun, I don't see why we need to wait for Survivor Series in order to do that either. I think that's great. So that's awesome. Let's go on with the rest of this show. Cause it was still a pretty good show. I wasn't thrilled about this though. So, there was a couple of year in review packages, probably one or two too many of those things. There was a lot of year in review packages. I liked the first one though. The first one was really good because they showed like basically all the stuff that happened for NXT 2.0. Of course, the first big major moment was the marriage of Indy Hartwell and Dexter Lumis, which was great. Lash legend wrestled Fallon Henley. The match was short, thankfully. Fallon Henley came out with a cancer kid, so I knew she wasn't going to lose. And she ended up winning. That was perfectly fine, I guess. This bled rather, into the Cora Jade promo. Because Cora Jade cut a promo. It's a pre-tape promo. And it was actually just basically a profile of everything she's done over the last year. About her wrestling Natalya, which I forgot was her. I forgot that Natalya wrestled her. I thought Natalya wrestled Roxanne Perez. But she wrestled Natalya, and while she lost, she walked out of it with greater confidence that she was going to become a star. And plus, she was very excited because Roxanne Perez was coming in around the same time. Then she decided that she was going to skip over Roxanne Perez. She wasn't going to waste any of her precious time talking about Roxanne Perez, which I thought was a great little wrinkle. So she went on to start talking about, the other women's division, how she doesn't need anybody's approval. And then she started running down the various members of the women's division, saying that her shoes have more personality than Zoe Stark, which is not giving Zoe Stark nearly enough heat. I mean, you could probably find an empty bag of Fritos who has more personality than Zoe Stark, for Christ's sake. She said she doesn't like toxic attraction, but she understands them, which is nice. And that Wendy Chu is a human stuffed animal who doesn't deserve to be in a wrestling ring and is quite frankly pathetic. Which I laughed and wrote down as a quote, human stuffed animal, LOL. Because it was great. What a great line that was. Of course, because she gave so much extra stank on Wendy Chu, we had to get some opinions of Wendy Chu. So Wendy Chu says that Cora Jade is just jealous of Roxanne because everybody likes her. And she says she just dresses like this, but she really is a smart person and nobody lives in the generation of Jade. She lives in an apartment. My God, I want to punt 15 yards, my fucking TV. Dealing with Wendy Chu. She frustrates me so much. Lash legend, fresh off of her loss, comes into the interview area whining about said loss. Then she gets into an argument with Wendy Chu, who, referred to her feud with Tiffany Stratton by saying the last person she got into it with, she turned her lights out. And that's going to lead to a match between Lash Legend and Wendy Chu. Oh, the less said about that, the better. The less said about that, the better. Yulisa Leon is injured. She tore her ACL. She's going to be out for 9 months. This means Valentina Farash has to be a singles wrestler by herself. They were trying to make her feel better and trying to, by they, I mean Yulisa Leon, Valentina Farash, and Sanga. This unexplained trio. I don't understand how this works. Anyway, they was trying to comfort Yulisa and telling Valentina it's her time. It's her time to finally break out and become a star. They ended up running into Robert Stone and Von Wagner. Von Wagner is still upset about not winning the opportunity to wrestle for the North American title. And he decides to just pause right here and start a staring contest with Sanga. As Robert Stone was talking trash about Valentina, Sanga, you do not talk to her like that, or something to that effect. And next thing I know, the two guys were staring at each other, and I was like, man, there has never been a horse fight I've been less interested in than Sanga versus Von Wagner. And it's all Von Wagner. I don't mind Sanga. Sanga can horse fight it up all he wants. Von Wagner, he still looks like young Jack Swagger. I cannot stand the man. Can't stand the man. It's gross. It's very gross. And apparently they're going to have a match later. I forgot to talk about this when Fallon Henley won, but they were backstage and they were very excited about winning. When Brooks Jensen ran into Toxic Attraction and he did the good old boy thing, took his hat off and put it to his chest. I never understood that concept of being country, where you can't wear hats around ladies. Apparently, you want them to see your actual head. So he took his hat off and went over to Mandy Rose. To which he started saying that he saw her Instagram picture last week, the one where she was doing the Playgirl, the 2 titles Playgirl thing. She covered her chest and covered her crotch, which was a great shot, by the way. It was excellent. Then he said that he complimented her on her tits, and he said, titles. Mandy was very offended by this compliment, and says, "In your dreams, kid." And he's like, "How did you know you were in my dreams?" I was like, ugh. Whoever is writing this simp cringe stuff, they're really good at it. And he needs to stop because it makes no sense for you to do this to this guy. Anyway, Fallon Henley started taking up for Brooks Jensen, even though he's being creepy and telling Mandy Rose that he dreams about her. So simpy, so creepy. But Fallon Henley, who apparently is going to like him, but is she going to like him, or just like him? Or is she just going to like him like a friend? Is she going to friend zone like him? Or like him, like show him her naughty parts? We haven't gotten that far yet. We've been doing this for several months. They've been building up this whole Fallon Henley, Brooks Jensen version thing. They're still doing it. So Fallon Henley got into an argument with Mandy Rose. Didn't do her any good, though. Mandy Rose then goes and she cuts a live promo where she's back from her vacation, unified champion. She's only got the NXT belt now. And said that if she chooses, she will run NXT UK or NXT Europe. She's going to run that too. And they started talking about how Toxic Attraction is a super group and will be winning the tag team championships back sometime soon. This led to Alba Fire coming out there and saying that Mandy Rose might have won the NXT UK championship, but she has no idea of what Alba Fire comes from. And that in Scotland, we let our successes speak for itself. In my eyes, you'll see the successor of the Fire Keepers. And some old stuff about winning the NXT title. Then she beat them up because she had a bat. So it made sense this time. She had a red bat, so she beat up Toxic Attraction with her red bat. And it looks like Alba Fire is going to be the next victim for Mandy Rose. I feel like this match should have happened already. Matter of fact, I feel like this match has already happened already. But hey, Alba Fire is a good opponent, I guess. I guess they're not ready to do anything with her yet. She was just kind of waiting around for Mandy Rose to not have anything to do. But they've set up some decent feuds for Mandy Rose in the future. They got this Alba Fire thing, which seems to be a little bit more on the immediate side. And then they're probably going to go into the Fallon Henley thing later. Fallon Henley got no chance of winning this title. She got zero chance of winning. But it's just a really good push forward for her. So I'm really starting to question how long Mandy is going to stay in NXT. Because once you see that she still has some people that she hasn't beaten yet, she's still got some legs in this run. You know, there's still some legs there. So, okay. But the Alba Fire thing is probably going to be a legitimate feud. They're probably going to do a tag team thing with Fallon Henley or something. But we'll see. And plus, I really want Mandy to tie it up with Ivy Nile. And I also want to see her wrestle Tiffany Stratton before she gets called back to Raw or SmackDown. So, you know, she's still got there's still some legs in this title run, even though it's been going on for a long time already. That's the beautiful thing about, you know, storytelling. You can wrestle opponents more than once. You can also mix it up a little bit. Quincy Elliott made his debut. I'm not even sure if I feel comfortable saying him, you know, considering how this guy was moving around. Of course, he comes out, and I got to see his wrestling gear for the first time, and he looks like Mo from Men on a Mission, cosplaying Goldust. And I laughed so hard. He did some kind of booty rub to the post. I didn't get it. I don't understand it. The crowd, because it's Florida, they were super into this Quincy Elliott thing. They were really, really into it. They liked it. They liked this guy. But I, of course, looked at it and was like, pass. Pass, bruh. Mabel Dust is an interesting decision to go with. Some people have started calling him Fat Velveteen Dream. I would look, man. As much as Velveteen Dream weirds me out now, I wouldn't disrespect a man like that. I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far. Okay, but Quincy Elliott, he's dressed like Mo from Men on a Mission. He's in a giant purple onesie, and he's rubbing himself. He's wearing a purple garbage bag, rubbing himself. WWE will never change. Vince could die, and this company is still going to cover up fat guys, and they're going to put as much material on them as possible. So there was no doubt in my mind Quincy Elliott was going to be wearing something absolutely ridiculous. And they didn't just go ridiculous, they went retarded. They said, you know what? Somebody was watching Raw from like 1994 and said, you know what? Mo, Mabel, Quincy. We're going to put this motherfucker in a big purple jumpsuit. And then they went and did it. And now I got there's nothing but laughs. I think he was wearing eyeliner too. He's blowing kisses to the crowd. I was like, this guy's weird. This is a weird thing. This is a weird thing. But it wasn't as awful as I thought it was going to be. You could put him in the same boat as Goldust and maybe Velveteen Dream, but you know, I was just kind of like, didn't really need this. He looks ridiculous. He's a big dude who looks ridiculous. But I mean, I guess he liked that kind of shit, you know. All right, JD McDonough. He's talking about personal grooming and hygiene, how important this is. I was scratching my chin, understanding like, you know, hey, for starters, I need to shave. While he's shaving, I need to shave. Also, like, why is he talking about this? And he's saying that he's no longer going to tolerate the imperfections of Tyler Bate. Then he got cut by the straight razor. Then said the cat and mouse game with Braun Breaker will end with him being the NXT champion. Then he fired his barber because he cut him. And he looked at his hand, and it was supposed to be blood. That's what they wanted us to believe. It looked like Tang. It looked like orange juice, like pink tang. It didn't look like blood at all. It looked like, Kermit the Frog's blood or something like that. Like, I don't know what that was. It was super thin. Like, bro, what are you taking? Are you taking aspirin? Why is your blood so thin? It was awful, okay? It was awful. I'm not getting JD McDonough. I don't understand it. I don't know what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like some kind of Silence of the Lambs kind of thing. I don't know. Can't he just be Jordan Devlin with a different name? Like, I get it. We want him to be a character, but Jordan Devlin was kind of a character on his own, right? They were adding more stuff to his character before he left NXT UK. Like, they was adding all the champagne stuff and him driving sports cars and everything. And they're doing that now, but now they decided that he's some kind of psycho killer, which will be great if A, we didn't already have Dexter Lumis doing a psycho killer thing. B, he wasn't a human bobblehead doll where his head is bigger than his body. He looks like one of those things from NBA Jam. Like, you put in that code in NBA Jam and that they got giant heads, giant balloon heads. It's hard to take you seriously as a murderer, guy that's really into damage and, pain and blood and stuff when your head is so much bigger than your body. You're like a 9-year-old boy. I don't know, man. But hopefully, this thing hopefully I'll get used to it, but I ain't got used to it yet. Brian Breaker did a sit down interview for basically another clip show of a year in review. Talking about how he learned how to overcome adversity from losing to Ciampa. And that, him winning the NXT championship was the first time, a Steiner had won a singles title in WWE, and his dad got to watch him do it live. The disappointment of him losing in front of his family, a Stand and Deliver, but him winning the title on Raw, that was all nice. Just basically clips. And then we didn't get anything extra out of this. We didn't get any extra storyline out of Braun. Nothing really gained out of that. Tyler Bate cut a promo saying that he's looking for a rematch with Brian Breaker, but JD McDonough stands in the way of his divine purpose. And apparently those two are going to have a match. Okay. They got history from NXT UK. All right, fine. Cool. Whatever. The fifth match, Nikita Lyons and Zoe Stark. They're still pretending these two are a tag team. Versus Ariana Grace and Kiana James. Kiana James has a sci-fi theme. And it looks like, it's supposed to be like for Babylon 5 or some shit. I don't know what's up with her theme song or why it sounds like that, but it doesn't sound like anything that a person who is into business would have as a theme song. It sounds like somebody who should be dressed like 7 of 9 from Star Trek should have for a theme song. Whatever. But this match was actually pretty lengthy, and I was surprised that they actually gave it so much time. I'm also surprised at how little they used Nikita Lyons. Knowing how much everybody loves her, she actually won the Men of Culture tournament for hot chicks, and of course everybody complained that she's never going to lose. And I was like, maybe she'll lose, but the more it went on, the more it looked like she was never going to lose. But I think it was mostly people... And to speak a little bit about that tournament, because a lot of people didn't know it was a tournament going on. But to speak a little bit about it, I think that if you look at some of the vote totals, a lot of people just chose not to vote. People were like, it's too tough, I can't vote. And then that just led to Nikita Lyons having runaway victories. Instead of people, at least voting, so it'd be one thing if it was 300 votes and she got 150 of them. Well, no, that would have been 50-50. If she'd have got 280 of them or something like that out of 300 votes, that'd have been one thing. But if she gets most of the votes and it's only 70, it's like, well, did you really try to beat her? Like, you really didn't, did you? You just voted against her if you didn't want her to win. But whatever. Anyway, Kiana James' theme song is really weird. Ariana Grace, she's there. She's just kind of present right now. Zoe Stark is a working worker's worker. But she's boring, very, very boring. She's like one of those mazes you get on the back of a restaurant menu. She's like that. There's a guy by the name of Oro Mensah coming to NXT next week, apparently. But this is really Oliver Carter from NXT UK. He's a Ghanaian wrestler and one half of the hottest tag team under the sun. I never really could tell him apart from his partner, who was Ashton Smith. And Ashton Smith was actually released during the mass releases of NXT UK. Oro Mensah is very good. It's going to be very difficult because he's another Malik Blade, another Idris Enofe, another Wes Lee, a very athletic black dude. That's about the same build as they are. You know, he's not supremely tall or supremely big, but he's very athletic, you know, somewhat charismatic. So he's gonna have a uphill battle. You know, they changed his name, which a lot of people was pissed off about. I'm not, because Oliver Carter, the guy's fucking from Ghana. He's from Africa. Why would his name be Oliver for any reason? I never met an African named Oliver. I met a few named with the last name Mensah, and I think Kofi Kingston's real last name, his shoot last name is Mensah. So, you know, I used to know what those words meant, but I don't anymore. Like, not off the top of my head anyway. Like, I did a lot of, like, extensive looking into various African cultures, like, of course, the Kiswahili and you know, cultures, and the Ashanti and the Yoruba and all that kind of stuff. So I used to see, like, those names, and I used to know what those names meant, but I'm not so sure what Oro Mensah means. I wish I was able to bring that to bear, but I didn't look it up. I do my reviews right after the show ends, so I didn't look it up. Sorry. But it's actually more of an African name than Oliver Carter, because, like, why would that be a guy's name ever? He's African. Why would that be his name ever? It makes no sense. So to me, they're fixing a problem. You know, it's not that you're, you know, just rebranding everybody. Hell, that could be his shoot name for all I know. His real name might be Oliver Carter, but it doesn't sound African, you know, and this guy's African, so go with something African. Grayson Waller, he's back. He had a pretty good year up to the part where he lost to AJ Styles. Then things kind of hit the skids for him. But he thought he was going to be the NXT Superstar of the Year or something, whatever, and found out that he wasn't. Then he claimed that he was going to be the face of the brand. Shit talked to Apollo Crews a little bit, and then said that Braun Breaker has been ducking him all year, which I'm pretty sure is not true. I believe that Braun Breaker has already beaten Grayson Waller. I'm not sure though. I'm not willing to put any money on it, but I'm pretty sure it already happened. We got another vignette for Sol Ruka, who said that for the women's division, it will not be another day at the beach. She still only comes across as a white woman who likes doing yoga, which seems like every college student from Maine to New Mexico, well, hell, from Maine to California. So, like, they all just like to, you know, do Pilates in the sun. So I don't understand like what she's gonna do to stand out, but I'm gonna give her some time. Soul means sun. I don't know what Ruka means. I don't know, but we'll see. They're still looking to introduce new talent. They're starting again. They're doing a rebranding of NXT apparently next week, or not, in 2 weeks, because they're taping the show this week. This episode of next week's episode of NXT rather will be taped today. So the next live episode will be September 27th, which ought to be fun. So September 27th ought to be the new rebranded NXT episode with the new logo and the new look and everything. That ought to be very nice. It's always nice to change things up, even if you're doing it for what I don't think is the right reasons, you know, of fan service or to a bunch of fucking weirdos who quit the brand a long time ago. But it is what it is. Anyway, this was a really good episode of NXT. To me, it ended one story, I think maybe two. The story of Hank and Javier Bernal ended, even though it was kind of a mini feud, because it had only gone on for 2 or 3 weeks before they had the match. Nothing major. Anyway, that wasn't anything major. They finished the storyline between Fallon Henley and Lash Legend. But they didn't really start anything new for Braun Breaker. They finished a feud between Creed brothers and Pretty Deadly. They finally paid off the Solo Sikoa I Got Next stuff, and then teased more with the Bloodline, so that works. So it seemed like, the only person who really is not gaining much of anything out of this episode was Braun Breaker. We didn't get anything that told us who his next opponent could be. No number one contenders match. I guess the closest thing to it is Tyler Bates versus JD McDonough, but he's beaten both of these guys already. So I don't really see that as being major. Sorry, I just don't care. But it was otherwise a very good episode of NXT where a lot happened, so I liked it. What did you guys think? Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.